Hello my loves and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I have a lot to cover. So since I made my video on how to live with a narcissist peacefully, I have been flooded with comments and with phone calls and with people that are in these narcissistic relationships and that have felt very hopeful at this video that I made that I guess was somewhat unique out there, which I didn't realize that. I was just coming from personal experience and sharing some things that I've learned along the way. But I guess there's not a lot out there that gives any hope to people that are in relationships with narcissists. So in today's video, I wanted to address the question, should I walk away from the relationship? Because that's another thing that I see so much out there when in the psychoanalyst world and people that are therapists and coaches and trying to help people out of abusive type relationships, is that most of them just have this cut and dry solution. And they say to people, you need to leave, you need to leave, you need to walk away. The best thing you could ever do is walk away. And while in theory, that might be very true and very healthy, the reality is it's just not that easy. And that people are very complex. We all have an individual thumbprint that could identify us in a crime. We are very complex and very individual, and people do not fit perfectly into scientific boxes. Again, like I said in that video, labels are made by men trying to box up certain characteristics about certain types of people. And it helps them in many ways to be able to foresee future problems in children, or to be able to know that certain ways of working with certain types of individuals doesn't work. There's many things that it can help in and aid in, but it doesn't have a one-size-fits-all solution within that, because people cannot be kept in boxes. And that's why we have spectrums. When we have labels such as autism and narcissism, there are spectrums of it, because you may have a narcissistic partner that just fits the bill. You could just check off every little thing, and then you may have one that checks off just enough to say, yeah, he's narcissistic or she's narcissistic, and yet there's some of the bigger problems like cheating, maybe spending all the money and, being irresponsible. Maybe those type of things aren't a huge issue. I have also found that people that have very strong opinions about, if you're with a narcissist, you just need to leave. They are doing a lot of projecting. They are coming from their experience and projecting it onto blanketing on everybody. And they'll say things like, I've never seen a reformed narcissist, and I've never seen, anything get better in a narcissistic relationship. So that's a lot of projection going on. Another thing that I have seen within the narcissistic bandwagon is that there is a lot of mixing up of symptoms. Like some of the things that they're accusing a narcissist of would actually be a lot, go up onto the spectrum of a sociopath or a psychopath even. So perhaps they've had experience with a narcissist that actually was also a psychopath or a sociopath. And so they're kind of mixing up all these things that happened in their relationship and then they did, and they're saying this is a narcissist. The narcissist is evil. The narcissist is bad. You need to get away from them. And it's, it makes people afraid of the person that they've lived with for 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So in this video particularly, I wanted to address a couple things. Number one, I want to talk about why leaving and walking away from a relationship rarely works. We all know the scenario. We all have heard of the woman or the man that they break up and then they get back together, and they break up and they get back together, or the woman just goes into relationship after relationship after relationship that has the same dynamics in it. So we understand that just leaving and just walking away from a relationship isn't going to necessarily solve the problem. Number two, I really want to address that when leaving or walking away from a relationship shouldn't even be a question in your mind. Things that are just deal breakers in a relationship, and that you shouldn't even have to go to somebody and say, should I leave? Number three, I want to talk about why a lot of different things that people try in trying to resolve their issue in relationships, a lot of the methods out there in and of themselves are not really resolving their issues and helping them to get unstuck or to move forward or to get to a different and better place in life. And then lastly, I want to discuss how there is hope, and you can create lasting, positive change in your life and in your relationships. So if this sounds like something that you need to hear, please stay tuned. So why doesn't walking away from a relationship usually turn out the way we want to see it turn out? Ideally, when we're on the outside looking in of another person's relationship and they're in a horrible relationship and we're saying, just get out of it, just get out of it. Ideally, we want to see them walk away, get some therapy, take some time away, find a new relationship and become happy again. But that's rarely the case that we see. Because what happens is when a person walks away from a relationship, they usually walk into a whole new set of problems and issues. And a lot of the reasons that they return to that relationship is because at least the problems and the issues that they had, they kind of knew how to navigate a little bit. But now they're in a whole new set of problems and issues away from the relationship and outside of it. And usually that is, a lot of times they've gone to live with somebody temporarily, so they're having to learn how to deal with new relationships all the while that they are in fight or flight mode, and they are out of their comfort zone. It basically sometimes feels like to the person that left that things just got worse rather than better. Initially, they may feel relieved and, I'm away from the drama, and they may feel really gung-ho about starting a new life. But when they realize that this isn't as easy as they thought it was going to be, on top of it, they don't have at least the relief, which we're going to talk about in a second, of those times when they are getting along in the relationship, or they are receiving some sort of physical touch or something that makes them feel loved and seen, which we all need. Then, they're going to a lot of times just be drawn to leave and to go back into that, because that is now going to sound like a little bit more relief for the anxiety that they've just created in their life by walking away. There's also a lot of other complexities. A lot of times they have children involved, even if they're not little children, which is really difficult when you have little children. Even if they're adult children, sometimes the adult children don't understand the full dynamics of what's going on within a relationship. Sometimes it's going to break up the whole family. Sometimes a lot of this has been done happening in a covert way, and other people don't know. And you have this image out there that you've created, this persona that you've created, and now it's just going to come crumbling down, and that creates a whole nother level of stress for the individual. The other big reason that most people end up going back into these relationships is because of what is termed today as trauma bonding. Another term for it is Stockholm Syndrome. So trauma bonding happens, we become susceptible to what you call trauma bonding when we are in our formative years, and there was a mixture of parental affection with abuse. So perhaps you know, they took care of you, they nurtured you in some ways, like they fed you, they clothed you, at times they may have even protected you, but all through those years, maybe they were very demeaning, maybe they were physically abusive, maybe they were sexually abusive. All those type of things kind of set us up to be formed in a way that said that this is how love works, you know, that we just learn to, that some people don't know how to love the way we want to love them, and so we just learn to accept their abuse and work toward, hopefully, keeping them soothed and keeping them happy. And then during those times we can feel really high and we can really enjoy each other's company. And another thing with trauma bonding is usually people that have been abused and have this type of background are used to intense levels of living. So they're used to being really, really, really angry or really, really, really high and happy. And they're used to these real intensive ways of living, and they don't really know how to have this even keel in life. Like they get to this place of even keel and they get antsy and bored, and it's like this addiction. And so maybe when they leave and they get this even keel home that they're staying in, where, you know, there's not these highs and lows going on for the most part, they start to feel anxious, and it's like an addiction. They need some kind of a fix. They need some kind of a feel of intensity. And a lot of this needing of intensity is because we have, when you've been abused, you numb so much of your emotions down, and so you need more intensity to even feel. And it's just a whole nother layer. Like they say, healing comes in layers. It's a whole nother layer of healing that needs to be done. And so a lot of times going back into that relationship or a similar relationship to that one is because of this addiction to intensity and because of this trauma bonding. Sometimes when you've trauma bonded to somebody and you've come away for a while, then you start to have dreams sometimes at night. You start to remember all the good things, those highs when it felt really good, when you sat up all night and talked together, when you laughed, when you had, you know, incredible sex together, and just all those type of things. And you start remembering how good it was. And they come in, you know, sheepishly at some point, and they start to, you know, bring those good feelings, those initial times when you first met back in, because they're trying to draw you back in, and that just floods you. That good feeling, that intensity of those good feelings floods you, and you convince yourself that, oh, well, they realize how bad they've been and how they've hurt me now, and they're really going to try, and things are going to be different, and you know, I love them and they care about me and they're hurting too. And you just start making all these excuses. And this is a type of trauma bonding. And it's bringing this to awareness, but also finding healing for this that is just going to be imperative in order to stay out of these type of relationships. Again, sometimes they feel like they've gone from bad to worse when they're trying to live a lot of times with other people that don't have any clue or understanding on how to help people that have been through trauma. And so people that really haven't experienced this and don't know how to help often can actually be re-traumatizing and do more damage than they actually do help in the long run, because they can be very judgmental. They can say things that are very invalidating, such as you just need to move on, you just need to get over it, you just need to get your mind on something else, you just need to help somebody else. And these type of statements can be very cruel and invalidating to somebody who has been through abuse, because abuse is so degrading and so traumatizing, and it just really, really destroys the person's sense of self-worth. And you have to be very careful when you bring somebody that's been traumatized in to your home. And it's really important that you do probably have some therapy yourself or some kind of support outside of this person where you can learn how to navigate what they're going through. So a lot of times you're going to have this person that comes in to a home of somebody that's trying to help them when they really are ill-equipped to help. So also you have women that come in that go into these shelters, and they can be very impersonal because they're not people you know about. And pretty soon, you know, again, you're trying to learn how to figure out new relationships with these people, and you're trying to get personal attention and have somebody see you and understand you and care about you. And these people can care to a certain level, but when they're not, you know, family and friends, and they don't know your real history, and they're not bonded to you in that way, you feel that, and you want to be again with those people, anybody, even if it's that bad relationship that you feel gets you to some level. Another thing is living with other people. We often feel like we're a burden. We often feel like we're being watched, especially if we've been abused. That's one of, just like abandonment issues, this feeling of being watched, and you know that you're going to do something wrong anytime, can cause a ton of anxiety. And so feeling like you're watched, you're judged, you're misunderstood, and trying to please the people. There's just so many dynamics of trying to live with somebody else and just feeling overall like you're burdening them, and that they don't get you, and they don't really understand what you're going through or the emotions, especially when they say things such as, you know, you just need, they're a jerk and you just need to leave them, because that person still has emotions and love and a certain amount of emotions for the abuser. And regardless, they might be able to say, yeah, he's a jerk, but when somebody else starts saying that too, then they might, that might trigger again that trauma bonding, and they might feel like they need to protect the abuser, and which is in their mind their loved one. So essentially, when somebody leaves a bad relationship, just walks away from it, they've still got a lot of they have wounds. They are a wounded individual that needs to heal. And they can't just walk away and all of a sudden be about themselves, which is key. We have to know how to first prioritize ourselves and to love ourselves. And if we haven't learned that yet, we haven't even learned what real love is. We have to first learn to love ourselves to even know what real love is. Furthermore, they don't know how to let happiness in. They don't know how to trust happiness. They're a lot of times going to sabotage their own self. They are going to recreate upheaval in their life just simply because that's what's familiar to them. They have no idea who they are. They don't know what their identity is. They're used to being focused on another person, an abuser, somebody else, and they do this with an understanding that in return they are going to get the few crumbs of a little bit of affection here and there from them that they so desperately need. They just simply do not know how to function on their own. They're codependent. They only know how to focus on somebody else and somebody that seems to need them. And now they are out here on their own, whether they're living with somebody or not living with somebody, and it's focusing all on themselves. And there's this huge void and this huge lack of being able to know how to please themselves, to know how to know what they like or to what they want, or to know how to dream or to know how to plan or to have goals or anything like that. They're just completely devoid of this because they've been in this relationship that has been their sole focus, and probably one before that and one before that, and probably in their childhood where their sole focus was on the freaking abuser. And so now it's like, oh, suddenly they have to focus on themselves, and that is this huge scary void. And so it's so much easier to just run back to that relationship or to run into another relationship, so they now have again somebody else that they can focus on. So the next thing I want to talk about in this video is when you should leave, regardless of any of this, like when you should leave a relationship. What are the deal breakers? And number one is if they are being physically abusive to you, if they have been physically abusive to you, and that, like perhaps maybe one time they choked you or slapped you across the room or anything like that, one time. And maybe, you know, if it was years and years and years and years and years ago and it never happened again, that's one thing. But let me tell you, if they've done it once, it'll happen again. Do not put up ever when somebody thinks it's okay to harm, to physically hit another person or harm another person. That person needs major help. They are dangerous. I don't care how nice they are. I don't care how much they cry, how much they say they're sorry. They need help. And until they get real help and get real honest about their own issues, they are dangerous. It's a deal breaker. You shouldn't have to go to somebody and say, should I stay with them or should I leave them? If they've hurt you, if they've hurt your children, if they've been abused, physically abusive, either way, you need to get out. The other deal breaker is if they are verbally abusive to you. So verbal abuse can be just as damaging. In fact, there's evidence that it can be a lot more severely damaging than if somebody slaps you. But usually if somebody slaps you, they're verbally abusive as well. But even without the hitting, the physical abuse, if they call you names, if they make demeaning remarks to you on a regular basis, they call you bitch or they make fun of you or just say things to deliberately demean you and undermine you and make you feel bad, that's a deal breaker. Don't put up with that. Leave. The other deal breaker is if they are doing drugs, narcotics, or are a heavy alcoholic drinker that cannot control their alcohol and get abusive or aren't responsible, can't hold down a job because of it. That's a deal breaker because you're not even dealing with the person that you fell in love with. You're dealing with somebody that is altering their consciousness. So they're not even that person, and you've got to leave at least until they are clean of those drugs and that alcohol. Don't mess with that. That is just something that is going to ruin your life and your children's life and everybody's life around you. Don't mess with the drugs. And when I'm talking about drugs, I'm talking about, things like meth and cocaine, and I don't even know all the drugs that are out there. It's been a long time since I've even been anywhere near that type of world. When I was a teenager, I was a little bit, but I don't know all the drugs that are out there, but I know that they mess up the mind and badly, and people will do things when they are on drugs and when they're drunk that they won't do when they're sober. So if it's somebody that refuses to quit doing that type of thing, that is a deal breaker. You should leave them. So now I want to talk about some of the common ways people, when they do leave a relationship, some of the common ways that they try to stay out of the relationship or stay away from another bad relationship. And why this doesn't always work, why they feel so frustrated that they just get back into them. The first one we discussed already is they just leave and they expect that leaving is going to be enough, and they don't seek out further help or therapy or something that's going to start to shift them and help them to see things in a different light. So just leaving alone, again, as we saw, is not going to be enough. You've got to do more than just leave. The other thing that people do often is they right away find somebody new, and usually they don't understand how to pick up on, because they haven't done the healing, how to pick up on the cues of what got them into the first relationship and bad relationship in the beginning. And so they find somebody again that has that intensity of, oh, I just feel so in love, and we can talk for hours, and we have everything in common. And it's usually they get into these relationships and they're intense right off the bat. They usually move very fast, and then they're back in another relationship, hoping and believing in the beginning that they finally found Mr. Right and found something wonderful, only to find out a year down the line, maybe not even that long, sometimes longer, that this is just as bad, if not worse, than the relationship they had previously left. Another thing that people do that doesn't help, I have found that doesn't help a lot, is they just go to therapy. So they just find some therapist. And I'm not saying that therapy doesn't work. So let me back up and say that really quickly right now, because I've gone through therapy. I've gone through almost 10 years of therapy, and it helped me tremendously. But what happens is people think, oh, I'm just going to go to therapy. And they're not really proactive in their healing. So for me, my healing came about not just because of therapy. Therapy played a huge role, but I read books. And I have taken so many different online classes, and I've talked to people, and I've blogged, and I've journaled, and I've worked and worked and worked at helping myself heal. And so I didn't just go to therapy with this idea, I'm going to go to a therapist and the therapist is going to fix me. You can't go to therapy for that reason. Another thing is you've got to find a therapist that fits the problem. So when I looked for a therapist, I noticed that there were so many therapists that would have a huge page full of problems that they dealt with. It was just all over the board. And I knew then, I thought if they're gonna, it's kind of the jack of all trades, but expert at none. I knew that I needed to find somebody that was an expert. And then I found somebody, and she focused precisely on childhood abuse, and she was wonderful. And I stuck with her the whole time. So another thing I have found that is that people that they'll seek therapy and then they'll go to a therapist and they'll have a bad experience, which is what happened to me as a young teenager. I actually sought therapy way back when, and I had a bad experience, and I never went back until I was 40, and somebody really encouraged me to. And even then I was scared, because when you have been traumatized, you do have this tendency to globalize things, to project things out on so in other words, no men are good out there because you've had 5 men that have been horrible to you. So that's kind of what happens with therapy too. A lot of times we go to a therapy session, or maybe even, and it actually is awful, or they make it worse, or they don't help us at all, or they don't seem like they know what they're doing, or they're just, there's so many different things, and so we just give up. And so this is why that therapy commonly doesn't work. I've had one client tell me recently, and it was really sweet of her to say this, but she said, I have been to 10 therapists, and she said, I've gotten more help from you in this past year than I did from all 10 of those therapists. And I don't think it's because I am more knowledgeable, obviously more educated, or anything. It's simply because I get it. I've been there, I've gone through it. And with the other therapist that she went to, she obviously didn't find somebody that understood her dynamics and didn't take the time to really understand. Because like I said, people are very, very individual. Their cultures, everything. There's so much individuality. And a therapist really, if they're stuck in a box of this is how, the remedy, one size fits all, they're going to maybe help a few, but there's some that they're just not going to be able to help. Another thing that people do that they think is going to make a difference is they just decide, I'm just going to stay out of a relationship, and I'm going to go to work, or I'm going to, go get an education. I'm just not going to worry. And they never really do any deeper healing work. And so it might make them feel better for a while and to focus on themselves, to get an education or whatever. But in the long run, these deeper issues will still be there. They will still feel unfulfilled, and they'll look on this relationship time and time and time again and try to figure it out, and try to, in their mind, try to analyze and not be able to come to any resolution within that brings them peace about it. So just getting busy in life is not the solution either. Hanging out with friends is another thing people do. I'm just gonna hang out with my friends. I'm gonna go out all the time. I'm gonna lose weight. I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna show them how good my life can be, even though they're not in my life anymore, and they get attitude, and that works for a little while. But again, the deeper issues are not addressed, and they end up sometimes down the line ending up in another relationship, or they go back to that relationship or another abusive relationship, or they just feel unfulfilled in life. And another big way that is touted out there all the time is help somebody else. Get your mind off your own problems and start thinking about somebody else's problems, and that'll help. And people tout this because at some level, this is very soothing. But again, it goes back to why you were in that other relationship to begin with. And that was to get the focus off you. You had the focus off you and you had it on them. So it's another way of getting the focus off you and onto somebody else. But then your issues, again, are never dealt with. They're still there. And you're going to find that even when you're out helping other people and having these moments of just feeling wonderful and happy and joyful, there's going to be so much of this underlying insecurity inside of yourself and these triggers and so many other needs that you're going to constantly be pushing down and pushing aside until one day you're not going to be able to anymore. It's just going to be in your face. And so again, none of these are in and of themselves are going to work. Let's put them all together really quick. Okay, say we did all of them. We left, we sought therapy, we found somebody new, we got an education, we hung out with our friends, and we helped somebody else. We did all those. You know what? You are going to shift. You're going to do better in life for those things, okay? But ultimately, you need a solution to the core. Ultimately, you've got to uproot the problem, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So in this last section of the video, and thank you for staying this long with me, I think you kind of know where I'm going to go with this, because this is why I am a self-love coach. And so many people think of this like, oh yeah, I love myself. I take care of myself. But the whole idea is that when you've been through abuse, you've lost your connection of knowing how to love yourself. You have to rebuild that foundation in your life. And let me tell you, it is a foundation. Self-love. Love is the foundation of all things, but self-love is the foundation of you building a life that feels authentic, that resonates with you, that feels secure, where you can sustain happiness. Genuine self-love is key. Think about all the things that love entails. Okay, when you think of love, you think of somebody that you spend a lot of time with, that you think about a lot, that you study what they like and they don't like, that you learn what makes them healthiest, what makes them happiest, that you nurture, you care for, you protect, you laugh with, you share with, your attention when you truly love, you give a lot of positive quality attention to the object of your love. And that is what needs to happen with yourself. You need to first learn to have that for who you are. You need to be able to literally just feel in love, completely at peace with who you are, completely adoring the person that you are, completely in love with who you are and with your life. That is where we settle on a solid foundation. We just settle down in this, because we're no longer allowing ourselves to, when we get to that place, when that foundation is finally built, and it takes time, it doesn't just happen overnight. When that foundation is built, we're no longer going to allow ourselves to abuse ourselves verbally inside our minds. We're not going to put up with it. We're no longer going to neglect ourselves. We're no longer going to allow ourselves to feel insecure and badly and not have the nurturing and the tools to build ourselves back up, just like you wouldn't let that happen to your child. We're no longer going to allow others to treat us badly. We are going to be very protective of ourselves. And when we love ourselves like that, we are going to spot immediately, instantly, we are going to be sensitive to the disrespect and the abuse of other people. And there are going to be some strong boundaries around us that we're going to go, that ain't coming in here. And from this place, from this foundation, what does come in is healthy relationships. It starts with a healthy relationship with yourself, a healthy relationship with you, with spirit, and then with others, with the planet. It reverberates out, but the foundation has to be love, and you are the first person on your foundation. You have to love yourself first. It's imperative, and that's why I am a self-love coach. And I'm really excited because I am renovating my website right now and my courses to make them more affordable, more accessible to a more wider variety of people. I'm even trying to break free of just coaching women. I have coached a couple men now. So I'm working on now making my courses to reach a wider audience and to help them through these very things, through the different stages of genuine self-love. So in the past, I had a big package that you would just buy one 8-week package and you'd work through it. And what I'm doing now is I'm breaking this package down so that you can buy each step of the package, and you could take one step at a time and one focus at a time, which you did in the bigger package, but this time you can break it down and you can choose whether or not to add one-on-one coaching sessions with me, to just work through it yourself, or to add coaching sessions with me. And if you're interested in that, and you're really interested in building a really good solid foundation of self-love so that you can be clearer and on how to build the rest of your life, and you can attract better relationships into your life. If you're interested in this, then please use the link below and sign up for my email. Those people that are on my email list, as the classes come out, will receive a 25% discount on every one of the classes, and that's a huge chunk. So sign up now, because it's going to be those that I send the email to that are going to get the access to the coupon code to get the discounts. Another way that you can support my channel, if this has been helpful to you, is you can take a second to just give me a quick thumbs up. Please share this video with anybody that you feel could benefit from it. Please comment below. Please tell me what helped you out of the video. Please share your own experiences. People need to be able to read in the comments, to hear others' real experiences that they've been through. So that's another way you can support the channel. That's another way you can support others that are going through very difficult situations right now in their life. And also, you can subscribe if you haven't already. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for hearing me all the way to the end. This has been a long video. There was a lot to cover. For those of you that stayed to the end, thank you so much. Have a good day, and I will talk to you next time.